I know on the channel I've broken down some gameplay from professional players, I've broken down some other pub stomper gameplay, and I've even broken down some subscriber gameplay to give some tips and tricks on how to improve at Call of Duty. But this time around I want to go ahead and do it a little bit different, so I decided to break down a random. So to get this gameplay, I went into a few of my previous matches in the theater mode, kind of looked at the scoreboard and chose a couple people at random, and luckily it worked out that I got some good gameplay to break down. And what I mean, it's very beneficial to explain certain topics and to learn from. Also, just a heads up, I'm doing a subscriber gameplay breakdown this week, so if you're interested in having your gameplay broken down, go ahead and make sure you follow the directions in the description. And if you enjoyed this video or find it helpful in any way, please remember to hit that like button. If you want to find your way back to the channel so you can get additional content about Call of Duty and how to improve at Call of Duty, all you gotta do is subscribe with notifications on, and you can double check that by making sure that red subscribe button is turned to gray. So one of the most important parts to pay attention to when you're actually trying to improve at Call of Duty is to look at your overall stats and not necessarily what the specific number is, because that's kind of irrelevant, at least to a certain extent. So obviously you have the option to check out your different stats in game, but a better way to do this is either through the computer, which I'm gonna go ahead and link down in the description below, and that same link can actually be used for your cell phone, but there is also a companion app, so if you want to check out either of those, that's pretty much where you'll do that. So just to have an idea of specifically what we're looking at, let's go ahead and take a look at my stats, and I am no way trying to flex my stats because I know they could be better in different areas, but I'm still working on it. Obviously I'm trying to improve the same way a lot of you guys are out there trying to improve. So if you focus on the bottom right hand corner, you'll see my EKIA is 2.77 and my score per minute is 386. And when you compare that to my weekly, I have a 3.55 EKIA with a 418 score per minute. So you can see that both of those numbers are improved, and it's not like I only played like a handful of matches. I have over 2,000 kills in the week. So this is something I typically do on a regular basis. I'm always trying to make sure that I have that weekly way higher than I have my all-time, because obviously when you first get the game, there's a learning curve. You're trying to figure out the mechanics, seeing what the best class setups are, along with a lot of other variables. And one of the nice things I'll go ahead and point out about the combat records is you can actually look up anybody else's combat record. So in case you want to look how you compared or stacked up against Swag, K3, or Dismo, you're able to do that as long as you know their specific PSN or gamer tag. So for the gameplay we've been looking at in the background, you can see that the player has an improved EKIA and score per minute. So what I notice when I'm actually looking at their gameplay is that they're running the stim shot, which for their playstyle, they shouldn't really be running that stim shot because they don't really make those aggressive plays. They're not pushing multiple people. They're not getting back behind cover and actually using their stim shot. So for me, that is a complete waste. They could actually be better off using the acoustic sensor or the ComSec device. It also looks like they can go about adjusting their score streaks, because when you look at the score streaks, it doesn't look like they're set that high. But for the most part, this person's really only going to have one, maybe two bloodthirsties the entire match. And I think that sometimes a beginner mistake is to actually start off with some medium to higher tier streaks, when in reality, they're only going to get those streaks once in a blue moon, instead of actually just starting off with some lower end streaks, maybe even the lowest end streaks. So maybe an RCXD, a dart, a care package, a UAV, a counter UAV. Maybe those are the 5 streaks they really need to focus on. Make sure they're getting those maybe 2-3 times a match, and then you start to raise up your actual score streaks. And I know this from experience. Obviously I was a player on the lower end, like a 1.2 KD, 1.5 KD, and I brought it up significantly to the point where I'm calling in 3 snipers nest a match, or whatever the case is. Not every single match, but I am calling in the mid to high tier streaks pretty much every single match. And that's generally how improvement works. You start off crawling, then you graduate to walking, then to running, and then you're on a full-on sprint. So a couple other pieces of advice I have for this player, even though they'll probably never see this, is the fact that they could actually work on their map awareness and how they position themselves around the map, along with their accuracy. What I mean by the position themselves on a map, a lot of times they find themselves in the middle of the map, which is usually not the best move. They do have a rampart, which is pretty disgusting, one of the most overpowered weapons in the game, but the gun's not going to save you if you're in a bad position. And along with that, like I said, the accuracy portion, and I think there's a couple different areas they can improve in this aspect. One is the behaviors. It looks like they aim down sight for very long periods of time, Pre-aiming is a good thing, but sometimes they do it excessively. The other part is they don't really un-ADS if they're not locked on, and that actually puts them in a position to lose a ton of gunfights, because if they're not locked on right away, basically that means they lose that gunfight and they're not able to re-snap on or re-engage. So I'd also have them reevaluate what their sensitivity is. I think it could be a hair too low, and then maybe they got to drop down the aim down sight sensitivity to the 0.75. There's some people that don't even know that there's separate sensitivities in the game, so I would highly recommend them going into their settings and change those up a bit so maybe they can find a sensitivity that works a little bit better for them. Also, one other side note is I watched the entire person's gameplay and they did not use the ruined grapple hook once, so I'd highly recommend if you're not using a particular piece of equipment on a regular basis, you should probably change up that specialist. So when it comes to the second gameplay, you're going to immediately notice that this player is a camper. They have equipment charge, they have torque, they're running that Titan with the recon sight, and that's perfectly fine. But keep in mind that if you adopt this playstyle, you are severely limiting your ability to improve at this game, and you'll probably never be really good at Call of Duty. Obviously, you can have a good match here and there, or whatever the case is if you get a really lucky lobby, but if you're genuinely trying to get better at the game and just dominate lobbies, this is not going to be the way. So I think there's actually two different ways people are going to take that. The first being that they're going to go ahead and drop a dislike because they disagree. They're going to go ahead and comment down below talking about how I'm wrong, I don't know what I'm talking about, whatever the case is. That's one way to go. And then there's going to be another group of people that say, hey, you know what? I never realized that. You're right. Let me go ahead and see what I can do to actually improve. I'm not going to actually watch this player's entire gameplay. I'm going to focus on a few key elements to kind of give you some tips and tricks based off how this person's playing to maybe change up your play style. And as I dug a little bit deeper, I was able to look at this player's stats and I came to find out that they are much higher than I would have ever expected. And exactly why the specific number isn't all that important. And we look at this player's EKIA, you can see it's right around 2, and then their score per minute is right around the mid 200s. And to be honest with you, this is more like a stat chaser EKIA. And the problem with that is you kind of set a limit on how good you can actually be as a player. So that's why when I've talked about improving, I always talk about improving KD, then score per minute, then KD, then score per minute. And if you're actually looking to improve, you just repeat that pattern until you hit a certain plateau. So some of the things you'll notice as they play is they aim down sight for very long periods of time. The only way you're able to do this is if you know that you do not have to worry about your flanks. So they're pretty much camping, so they don't have to worry about map awareness. They go ahead and run back to their safe spot as quickly as they can because they're not really good at navigating the map. A lot of times you'll see this in gameplays where you run into a camp and you're like, what the heck is going on? And obviously they do get lucky every once in a while and they get a lobby that will actually just feed them the kills. Because look at their streaks. They have the sentry gun, the mantis, and then a gunship. So initially when I was looking at this player play, just based off the gun skill, the movement, the way they position themselves, how they navigate the map, I would have thought they were a below average to average player, which is what they are, but their stats are a little bit deceiving. I dug a little bit deeper, and this is pretty much the only specialist they use. There's actually 5 specialists that they've never used in the entire game, and then the other ones they've used a handful of times. And the same goes with the SMGs. They pretty much do not have a positive KD with a single SMG in the game. So keep in mind that I'm not doing that to bash this player because that's not the point of a gameplay breakdown. It's to provide constructive criticism and feedback on how they play and talk about how they can improve. They should probably drop the Titan and stop using torque. That's the first piece of advice. The next would be to lower all their streaks like we talked about in the first gameplay because this player can clearly not win gunfights. They need to work on their map awareness. Paying attention to the mini map is a huge thing. Running a UAV will help out with that, even though they'll probably get it a couple times a match, maybe one time a match if they're not camping. They need to work on those elements because those are the elements that are going to actually make them better. Not pre-aiming a doorway without moving for 14 seconds. That doesn't make you a better player. You guys saw it right there. That was an incredibly long time to pre-aim a doorway when no one is going to be running in. Even though it'd be incredibly hard, I think they need to ditch this camp first mentality. You see they place another barricade. They do get a hit marker, but it ends up getting hit, so it's not a big deal there. The guy has another barbed wire. It's like they're working together. I don't know if this person was in a 2-man party. I didn't look that closely at the other person's gameplay, but it is not a play style that you should adopt if you're actually trying to get better. So anyone that's made it to this point in the video, I'm sure you're watching because you actually want to improve at the game. keep in mind that do you want a fake stat line or do you want a real stat line? What I mean by that is because when I used to play Infinite Warfare, I know a lot of people didn't like that game, there was a feature that allowed you to see other players' KD and win-loss percentage. And I roughly had a 2 KD, but my weekly was usually over 3.5 because I really sucked when the game first came out. But besides the point, I'd run into somebody and I'd see they have like a 2.5 KD, and I think to myself, is this a real KD or is this a fake KD? 99% of the time, people are camping to get their KD exactly like this guy, and they do not have a lot of gun skill. They don't know how to position themselves on the map well, and they do not know how to actually play Call of Duty. So I guarantee you, if you focus on actually improving, your stats might suffer initially, but in the long run, you will become a better player and have way more fun with the game. I actually end out the video with this funny clip because this guy was camping so hard, he actually pissed me off. I was using my Outrider, and I knew he'd be where all campers end up going, so I ended up shutting him down pretty aggressively. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video or found it helpful in some way. If you did, please remember to hit that like button. If you'd like to find your way back to the channel, make sure you do subscribe with those notifications on. And if you'd like to have your gameplay broken down, make sure you check out the link in the description. See you on the next one. Appreciate the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.